work with legal aid. Um, in a minute, I will share my screen and I have a presentation I'll share with you, but a little bit about myself and my team. So I'm the lead family law attorney at the Nashville office for Legal Aid Society. We are a nonprofit law firm that serves low-income folks in Middle Tennessee and the part of the Cumberlands. The presentation is going to give you a lot more detail about that, so I'm going to dive in a minute. But our team specifically that I work in is the family law team. So we serve victims of domestic violence who are also low income, who need representation or assistance with divorces and orders of protection. That's like the bulk of what we do. And our Nashville office serves Davidson County and Williamson County. So the group that I manage does that. But there's lots of different areas at Legal Aid Society. So I'm going to kind of explain some of those to you. And of course, answer questions if you have any. I have a couple, so I'm going to start with sort of like all legal aid information, and then maybe near the end, I'll get into a little bit more family law. That's what I specialize in, but we have lots of different practice groups. A little bit about me is I came to Tennessee about 3 years ago. In New York, I was a prosecutor at the Queens County District Attorney's Office for 7 years, where majority of my time there, I was in the domestic violence unit, where I prosecuted, intimate partner crimes. Love doing that. That was like my passion. My entire legal career, I have focused on working with victims of domestic violence and trying to hold abusers accountable. It's definitely a passion of mine, and I love doing it. So we love working with our community partners who serve similar clientele, obviously, and I think that that's what makes it so great, because a lot of times when there's domestic violence present in our home, there's a lot of different issues present in that home. It's usually not just that. So we need our community partners. We need to partner together to try to help address all of the issues that are in those families, and so we can try to break that cycle of abuse or that cycle of poverty, which is the focus of Legal Aid Society. So I will introduce my team real quickly. So first moment, let me share my screen. Sorry. Never gets easier to do these things. 1 minute. Share screen. Okay, why? Oh, so it says that the host disabled participant screen sharing. I don't know if those the way for.
Okay, let me look into. Oh, hold on. Let's see. Let's try it now. Sorry about that.
You're good. So here we go. Let me enter this. Oh, sorry. Share. And then we go into this presentation. Okay. So 1 moment. Whoops. All right. So Legal Aid Society of Middle Tennessee and Cumberlands, just a little bit of information. We are a nonprofit law firm that provides, like it says, education and representation in civil matters for low income individuals, families, seniors who would normally not afford legal services. Our mission is kind of in some substance, we're trying to do what we can to get people what they need, their basic rights, their basic necessities in life, and just access to justice, because unfortunately our legal system is very hard to navigate if you cannot afford legal representation. And there are so many, the need for our services is far greater than we could possibly address. But we try to do what we can to meet those needs. So our service area covers this kind of gives you an overview, but we have 48 counties. So our office is pretty big. We have 8 offices. We have, like I was saying, the need for our services is far greater than we could ever meet. I feel like this screen kind of gives you the breakdown a little better, but 8 offices that cover these different counties throughout Middle Tennessee. In those offices, you're gonna have attorneys who handle, some attorneys who handle a variety of practice areas. And then when you come to Nashville, being our biggest office, we are more divided by practice groups, just because our service area is so highly populated. So we have all the different practice groups here in Nashville. And some of our more rural counties have maybe a smaller office, fewer attorneys, but those attorneys will practice different areas of law.
Hey, Rebecca.
Yes.
Just had someone ask if it's possible to be a little bit closer to your microphone.
Oh my gosh, yeah, of course. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
No problem. I'm like, you're not meaning to hit that. Okay. So just like this screen kind of gives you a few stats about the need for our services. You know, it's the cost of living has just gone up exponentially in this area and throughout the country, and the cost of legal services is high. And there's just so many people who cannot afford an attorney but desperately need one. And so that's where we try to be of service. And some of the stats here that are explaining that to kind of the number behind those percentages, but I won't read them to you, but you can kind of check out that obviously it's a high percentage that face legal problems that they would not get adequate legal help without our services. Now I have a client testimonial that I can share with you, but let me see if I can pull it over to one. Let me know if you can hear this okay.
Has required a lot of medical care his whole life. So we've had nursing in our home since he was 9, and then round the clock care since he was 16. But once you're out of school, you no longer are eligible for that service. Either I take care of him for the 138 hours he wasn't going to get a nurse, which would not be safe for him, or he would have to go into a nursing home. And I don't think he would have lasted long there. Someone at work said, you know, why don't you call legal aid? And they took on the case. I mean, not only was I impressed with the quality of the lawyers, legal aid, but the help they brought in. There were lawyers from the Tennessee Justice Center. There were private lawyers that they brought in. And I felt that when we were in that federal courtroom, which was very intimidating, that we had just as much support as the other side. Legal aid bought us 3 more years at home with Tristan, which was amazing. These kids don't live as long as we do. So those days are priceless.
Ben is a miracle. God put him here to change the world. And I feel in my heart, Ben can show people, yes, I've got PRE1 of the brain. Yes, I have kyphosis. Yes, I have scoliosis. Yes, I have MEP2 Rett syndrome, but I can succeed. He graduated with honors with a 3.3 with regular classes. They said that was impossible. And Ben said, my man and I work 2 hours, 6 days a week. On Saturday, we work on Boy Scout badges. And I wouldn't have made it without my nana. My husband and I both in our 70s. We've raised Ben since a baby. And we're not going to be around forever. I said, so, you know, we've got to have insurance for this boy. We've got to set in to be able to live on his own. They took him off 10 care. He was going to be 18. He was on Cover Kids. The lady, she whispered to me, you need it on legal aid. And this precious Shelby Johnson answered the phone, and she said, I don't see any reason why this boy won't get help. So then I started crying again, but it was tears of joy. This month they called and said Ben had received, thank God, he would have insurance. We think legal aid is a blessing from God, and we think Shelby Dodson is a champion. She is our champion and our star, and I pray for her each and every day. And for legal aid, we pray that people will give.
I was in an abusive relationship with my husband, physical and verbal. And he also had an addiction to my medicines that I took for cancer treatments. And he would be abusive to my daughter, Kayla, if she tried to stand up for me. I had just gotten married like a week before. I was outside in the garage cleaning up my stuff. I came inside to get gloves and I heard my mom crying, and I turned the corner and he has his hands on her neck holding her up against the wall, saying that if you don't give me your medication, I will kill you. And I screamed, get your hands off of her. And he immediately dropped her and then came after me. For a long time, I blamed my mom, why didn't you leave him sooner? Why did you force yourself to go through this? She sat me down in tears and she was like, him come after the only thing in this world that I care about, that was what was eye-opening to me. Legal Aid Society gave my mother a reason to live when she needed it the most. Mom, I've always tried to stand up for you, especially when I know you were too weak to stand up for yourself. You taught me to be bold, brave, and never back down. I'm proud of you for multiple reasons. One of the biggest ones is being brave enough to take the steps you did in order to give yourself a better life, one that you actually deserve. Thank you for teaching me what it means to be a mother. I can only hope to make such an impact on my own children's lives.
This one. Oh, sorry, now I'm back. Oh, sorry. Oh. I think the YouTube videos continue to play. All right. So just shared that because it obviously just kind of gives a little bit of a personal story, a couple of personal stories about the kind of work that we get to do here, and the kind of impact we can have on some of our clients and why we do this kind of work. A few more stats just to give you some background. These are for, a little old from 2019, but similar. It talks about the number of persons that we've helped through certain projects, the number of requests for assistance that we've received. We give lots of presentations out in the community, similar to this one, and to other, some targeted at clients, some targeted at professionals, advocates that serve the same clientele or similar. We distribute, legal information and advice packets. We do clinics in the community where folks can come and either by phone or in person get like 30 minutes or more of legal advice, consult with an attorney, get help with different things at our legal clinics. And we just try to reach as many folks as possible through community education, limited service, clinics, advice, everything we can, and also representation on their legal matters. This slide sort of just kind of gives a breakdown of those different areas. So we represent clients in court, we give them specific counsel and advice for their situations. We do the clinics, we're out there doing community education, representation in IEP meetings, which might be relevant to some of your clients as well. And then of course, we have lots of community partnerships to try to get resources to all of our clients. So one of the biggest questions we get when we're having referrals or we're talking with different partners is what kind of cases do we take? And this slide sort of breaks that down. Like I said, my section, we handle family law cases where the clients are victims of domestic violence. But we also have a consumer and tax practice group where they help folks with different types of cases involving tax issues or consumer fraud issues, things like that. They have an employment and reentry group that helps folks with like expungement of their criminal records and things like that. We have health benefits and education practice group. We have housing and eviction practice group, and we have an immigration practice group. So the type of cases that we don't take, which is sometimes helpful to know, are first being criminal cases, and except for reentry matters like expungements. Good to know, because also if you've ever come from another state, where most states have a legal aid society, they have different funding sources, and in some states legal aid does do criminal practice. So like where I came from, New York, Legal Aid has a criminal practice group, and they are the they're the public defender's office in most of New York, and in a lot of states that is the case. But here that is not the case. So we cannot, because of our funding sources, and that's why we cannot handle criminal cases. And here in Middle Tennessee, there is a public defender's office that is different. So one big distinction to know. We do not do mass tort cases. We do not handle personal injury. So for those kinds of things, if you have anyone with those types of issues, we would just make a referral to the private bar. Custody is a big one but because we do handle family law, sometimes we get a lot of inquiries regarding custody cases. And to be clear, we don't handle what we call straight custody cases. And the reason being, if it's just a custody case, so that means unmarried parties, two parents who are having a custody dispute, that's going to be handled in juvenile court. And it's typically handled in juvenile court. And they have resources there to help pro se litigants, and they have, if someone's parental rights are at issue, they should be appointed an attorney. And so because we don't want to duplicate services, we don't, and because of our funding constraints, we don't handle those cases. Those would just be referred to juvenile court, and just seeking out the resources that they have. Or for example, if it's a child support issue, just child support, we would refer folks to child support services because they have so many resources to help folks with the child support cases. And then also listed here is our divorces without domestic violence present. And the reason for that is just because of because of the volume of need for our services, we have to prioritize the most urgent matters. And so one of our prioritization factors is, are they a victim of domestic violence? And is there a risk of substantial injury to either the victim or the family members, or substantial injustice if we don't get involved? Because unfortunately, there's just such a great volume of folks that need help with divorces and cannot afford a divorce attorney. So we have to try to prioritize and meet the most urgent need for that. Now, just to make it confusing, we do handle custody cases if they are related to a divorce. So if it's a custody issue under a divorce, then obviously we're handling that as a part of the divorce. Or if we take on an order of protection case that is related, then leads into a custody case related, and they're already our client, we will take on those cases in juvenile court. So you will see us in juvenile court sometimes, but it's just, we don't take them on unless they're related to that order of protection case. So I'll talk about some of our different practice groups for a bit and explain what they do. We do have an employment practice group that helps with unemployment denials. Like I mentioned, re-entry matters. We actually have an entire re-entry group at this point that helps with expungement matters, to help people who are, that's posing a barrier to employment, job preservation, and if they're having issues because they're in an abuse registry, we can potentially help with that. Oh, I'm sorry, I've already finished my group. I've already mentioned family law, but again, where there's domestic violence present, we can help with order of protection hearings, divorces, and the things I didn't mention were victims' compensation cases and safety plans. So the Victims' Compensation Fund is a great resource we are probably familiar with, that there's certain qualifications, but if someone's been a victim of a crime and they have lost wages, or they have unpaid medical bills, uncovered medical bills that they can't afford, and certain other things, they can request reimbursement through this Victims' Compensation Fund. Also, if they've been the victim of a sexual assault, they can request family suffering compensation under this fund. And when they make that request, the Victims' Compensation Fund, sometimes they might get a denial, or they might not get as much as they thought they should get. We can help with those cases if they just need help filling out the paperwork and submitting what needs to be submitted. But if they do get a denial, or if they get less than what they thought they should get, we can help with those appeals. So that's another area that we can help victims of domestic violence. or sexual assault. And I should have mentioned that earlier as well. So obviously, this slide says domestic violence. I've mentioned domestic violence, but we also help victims of sexual assault as well, even if they did not know the perpetrator of the crime. So not technically, not intimate partner violence, but just sexual assault. We do help those victims as well, or victims of stalking. We can also help them as well. And then safety planning. So safety planning, we have a victim advocate, we have a full-time victim advocate on staff that is here to support our clients through whatever legal process they're going through in the different cases. There's safety planning with any of our clients or any of our applicants that need safety planning, helps connect them to resources and things like that. So we have a health benefits and education practice group as well, which you guys might be very familiar with, working with CASA. The health benefits and education team, they work on 10 care denials, they work on SNAP denials, families, and any of these denials, families first, MSP. They work on Social Security, insurance and Social Security disability cases, and they also work on special education cases. So. All right. Our housing group, so a very busy group, obviously, especially in Nashville these days, but really everywhere. So they work in these different areas: illegal lockouts, utility shutoffs, failure to supply emergency services, evictions from public or subsidized housing, the housing choice voucher program, terminations, fair housing discrimination, and denials from public and subsidized housing, and some. It says private landlord tenant. We typically don't take a lot in that area, but if you have a question about that, we can refer you to our housing group. We also recently, in the last year, we have a new fund for the eviction right to counsel program, which is really exciting, which really helped. We just have so many more housing attorneys right now, and we have a great program where they're able to help a lot of people. So really busy group over here, and they're doing a great job. This just sort of lists, for an example, some of our key funding sources. I mean, we have lots of different funding sources, but some that you might be familiar with. Obviously, our immigration team, our reentry programs have great funding programs. Here in family law, we are funded primarily by Metro appropriation, by the Victims of Crime Act funding, and our newest funding source is called FCLS, and it is for the Family Centered Legal Services. It is a new funding source, so it's been lots of fun to learn about it and learn about all the requirements, but that just came up last month. So we are kind of getting used to it, and it is funding a lot of our services at this time. This slide just gives you a little bit of information about immigration legal projects. I know you guys work with our immigration team as well. But if you guys have any questions about this, I know, so one of the things that led to us presenting today is that one of our newest hires, Lexi Whitaker, she works with both us and our immigration team, but she's a CASA as well. So if you have any questions about immigration, I'll refer you to Lexi, because she works with our immigration team and she can help you get referrals over to them. So I mentioned community education, but just to be clear about what that is certainly we can do outreach presentations to different groups where we think might be helpful, or we're asked to come. We give out free legal help booklets. We do live presentations. Really any kind of training that folks might ask us to do. So, if you ever are in a situation where you're planning a conference, or, and if you think you would be a good fit for that, please feel free to reach out. Or if you ever have any groups that you work with that think this information would be helpful, we're happy to come out and talk to them anytime that we can. So how to get help? So obviously you can give a phone call. We can check out our website. I will also share with you some of our more specific referral information. So, but generally speaking, if you need to refer someone to legal aid, you can direct them to our website, which is las.org, and or our phone number, obviously. When they call, they're gonna get directed to they're gonna be asked a few questions, and they're gonna be directed to the appropriate office, for wherever they live. And then there'll be some more intake questions that have to happen before they're referred to the proper group. For their legal problem. Something else that I haven't mentioned is that in addition to our staff, so we have, of course, attorneys and paralegals and legal assistants and advocates and different folks that work for legal aid. We also have a really fantastic volunteer lawyer program. So our volunteer lawyer program is exactly that. It's private attorneys in the communities who volunteer their time and take on pro bono cases. And so the volunteer lawyer program, sometimes when it's a case where we feel like they really need an attorney, but we cannot take it in-house because we're just too busy or don't have the resources at that time, we'll refer them to our volunteer lawyer program, and they'll try to connect them with a volunteer lawyer that might be able to take the case. So that's also that helps us reach more people. So I'm gonna pause now to see if you guys have any questions. I have not been able to read the chat while I'm okay, mostly names. But any questions about what I've talked about so far?
I'm just curious, can you go back to that immigration slide?
Sure. Yeah. Whoops. So for immigration, these are some of the areas where they might be able to assist. I don't know if you have any particular questions. Again, I don't handle immigration, but we do refer a lot because we have a lot of clients who are co-clients that are both our immigration. But if you have any specific questions about immigration, you can certainly, if I don't know the answer, I can try to get you the answer.
This is kind of a specific question,
Sure.
but say there was a married couple and there was domestic violence in that relationship, but they were not legal citizens and they were not married in this country. Would that impact you guys' ability to work with them?
No, and actually that's a great question. Sorry, I didn't address that before. We are very fortunate in the family law group that legal status or their citizenship status does not affect our ability to assist them. So we have funding, our VOCA funding allows us to, after our Metro funding as well, allows us to serve non-citizens. It's a non-issue for us. So we can still help. Some of our practice groups do not have that luxury, unfortunately, because of their funding. Some of the other practice areas. I know, for example, our housing group cannot because of their funding, but there is a section outside of our office of the Eviction Rights Council that can help non-citizens. So you can, if someone's not a citizen, please feel free to still make that referral to us. Because I know for family law, we can still handle that. We can still take their case. Other groups may or may not, but they often have referral information if they can't. For us, also, the second part of your question, so they're not a U.S. citizen, that's okay, we can still take their case. If they're married in another country, but they've moved here and now they're wanting to get a divorce, there's some law where we need to kind of evaluate, like, were they legally married in their other country? And so we have to, it's kind of a fact-specific inquiry where we see, like, were they considered legally married in the country that they came from? If so, they can still get a divorce here. So I have had many clients where they were married in another country, and then we just do the divorce here, because they were legally married in that other country. But again, it kind of depends on what kind of the marriage they had. Because then we also have some cases where it's more like a religious marriage, but not recognized by their state or the country where they came from. And in those cases, they may not be considered married in Tennessee. But that doesn't mean we can't give them legal advice about it, because if we find based on what they're telling us that they might not be considered legally married, then on one benefit, they don't really need a divorce. And it's just maybe us explaining that to them, like why they don't need a divorce, but they may need to do other things to protect themselves. excuse me, to, if there's property, if there's a house, if there's children and they need to get child support, things like that. So if we were to get a case like that, we would evaluate it. And then we could give them the advice based on what we're able to find out.
That's helpful. And you guys have staff that can speak Spanish?
Yes, so we have, well, Lexi, our our one.
I do, Sarah.
So she does a lot of our intakes and she speaks Spanish. We have, one attorney who speaks fluently Spanish. I speak some Spanish, but not perfect. But yeah, so we have staff that speak Spanish. Our victim advocate speaks Arabic. And we have other staff members throughout, but that's just on our team. But throughout legal aid, we try to hire, we love hiring those who are bilingual. And if not, we have access to multiple language services. So we use 2 language translation services for when we need to. And if we need to hire an attorney for, or sorry, an interpreter for anything throughout the process, we're able to do that. For court, we're able to, through the court system, as I'm sure you guys know, request an interpreter, but for all the prep and all the interviewing and everything, we are able to hire or use our services.
Rebecca, I have a question, and this might be something I should already know, but I'm still learning. So if we have like a kiddo that was brought here that we're working with, and we suspect there's some human trafficking potentially involved, and they're in state custody, are we to assume that DCS is pursuing a visa for them, or is that something that as a CASA advocate we should be addressing? Do you know kind of the process for that?
I would not assume that DCF is doing anything. I mean, I would hope, but I don't think I would assume that that is the case. I don't know enough about what they do when someone's in custody and that person is not, is not a US citizen, but that child. But I can look into that. I can ask, maybe Chai knows, but I just wouldn't assume that they are, because I feel like I'm not sure that they have the resources to always do that for folks, but for children, excuse me. But I would hope so, but I don't know. I don't do it for that question. I don't know about that.
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. Do folks have questions I can keep asking, but I don't want to dominate.
Sarah, I think we all learn by other people's questions. So if we have a minute and you have another question, I would say ask on.
I'm just curious, because we get a little bit of VOCA funding too. And we give out pamphlets to caseworkers about VOCA, but I mean, they've got so much on their plate. I'm just curious, like when kids age out, what might that look like for them trying to access VOCA funds if they wanted to, if they were, had experienced abuse and neglect, were in the system, aged out, and, they are a victim of a crime, and maybe they could get compensated in theory for that. I'm just curious what that might look like.
So you're saying you have minors who receive, they apply for like victims compensation themselves, or they literally from VOCA grant funding?
I want to do my job to get them every resource that they can when they age out, essentially is what I'm saying.
Right.
And I'm wondering if I could do a better job about trying to encourage them to try to pursue that, or if that's just too overwhelming or too challenging to even try to access. I don't know if I'm framing this the best way.
I feel like there's a couple of ways. Well, in terms of victims compensation, if they're a victim of a crime, like you mentioned, there is some, obviously, like there's pamphlets out there everywhere, I think, about victims compensation that they can apply for. I know that if they are the victim of a crime that has like a criminal case, the DA's office has victim advocates that will often help folks fill out those forms as well. We have a victim advocate who will help folks fill that out. What I will say is depending on what crime and depending on when it happened, there are often laws that say, you know, once they turn 18 or once they become an adult, if it was a crime when they were committed, when the crime was committed when they were a child, you kind of get more time usually to report those crimes, right? If there's a statute of limitations for a certain crime, that time usually starts to run when the person becomes an adult. So I would think that yes, like let's say someone was had a crime committed against them as a child, they become an adult and they've never requested compensation for that before. I don't know specifically if there's rules for that with the victim compensation fund here in Tennessee, but I would argue that they should have more time to apply for that, right? Because as a child, how did they know to go apply for that? Like, you know, but as an adult, then they should have kind of a chance to then apply for it. I would certainly make that argument. I don't know if it would work or not, but it seems like a reasonable argument to make. So if you had someone aging out and they were the victim of crime and they never received any victim compensation fund, they may be able to apply it at that time, even though it's maybe past the statute of limitations because they're just now becoming an adult. So I think it's definitely worth a try. And if you have a specific case where that's an issue, you can always contact us. We'll take a look at it and see if we can help in any way. And I'm gonna also, in the chat, I'm gonna drop, so if you guys ever have any referrals, so if you have someone who's aging out, another resource that they might, if they need anything that legal aid, you can of course refer them to legal aid to contact them themselves. But if you want to kind of do that warm handoff, they're super concerned about a certain situation, you can always feel free to contact me. You can feel free to, I'm gonna give you our referral email. The referral email specifically for us here at Family Law, but if it's an issue for another practice area, we can pass along that referral to one of our other practice areas. We also, when we have a case, we always are kind of looking for second problems because we know that a lot of what they need to help are obviously going to have multiple legal problems that they need assistance with. I'm going to make sure to drop some of this referral information into the chat. I can also share our presentation if any of those slides are helpful. And I can share more. I mean, I guess the other thing that maybe some of your clients as young adults who are aging out of the system that might be helpful to you. Of course, any of those practice areas that we discussed, but specifically for my team, is just the order of protection. If they are in a relationship at any point in time that you feel like they need an order of protection, we usually become involved in the case after the order of protection is filed. But if you're working with someone you feel like they might need to file for an order of protection, the Office of Family and Safety helps folks file for those orders of protection. So they can go into Office of Family and Safety anytime. It's staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they can have an advocate help them fill out the petition for the order of protection and submit it all from the Office of Family and Safety. Once that is done, then they get referred to us for potentially representing them at that order of protection hearing. So that may be relevant to some of your clients. But if you ever have a client with a legal issue that I mean, I don't know if you guys would have someone who doesn't qualify, but for those who don't qualify, we tend to refer them to the National Bar Association attorney referral service that they have, where they will try to find a private attorney who will either do a sliding scale for their fees or do a payment plan or something. So I will share that just in case. And if you have if any of the other practice groups that I mentioned say you want to learn more about what they do, or any more specifics like housing, for immigration or anything like that, happy to reach out to those practice groups here and they're, let them come and kind of tell you about their specialty and their practice areas as well.
Does anybody else have any other questions related to immigration or other areas of practice that we've talked about today?
I have one. Can you guys see me?
Mhm.
I can't, okay. Sorry, I'm on my phone. I can't really, I don't know what's happening. If I have like an extended family member that wants to take custody of a child, and I'm having difficulty getting DCS to move forward with it, despite like a cleared background check, is that something that you guys could help with?
Possibly, yes. So something I forgot to mention, is that legal aid does sometimes assist with like adoptions or conservatorships, guardianships. We tend to not do those in-house. Those tend to be part of our volunteer lawyer program because there's just a lot of great attorneys in the community who will do those pro bono. So if you ever have a case like that and want to make that referral, we can see if we can get a private attorney to do whether it's the adoption, the conservatorship, or guardianship. So we do take those and we try to place them with volunteer attorneys who handle those for you.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Rebecca, do you all get involved with those processes only after parental rights have been terminated, or do you ever engage in the process of pursuing a TPR when DCS is not, let's just say when DCS is not? How about that?
We don't typically, that's not typically what we do. Just because, like I said, our grant funding doesn't cover that, but and most of the time, if like you said, usually DCS would be handling it, or in juvenile court, you can sometimes get an attorney appointed if someone's parental rights are being, are at issue. You could usually request an attorney to be appointed.
Right.
Party.
But if it was a grandparent though, or a foster parent, that's probably not going to be an option.
Probably, oh yeah, right. So in the past, I actually did represent a grandparent in one of those because we had a specific grant that allowed it a couple of years ago. And so under that grant, we were able to do those, but we don't have that grant anymore. So as of right now, no, but I wouldn't, if you have a question and for the grandparent who isn't able to do it, make the referral and we'll see what we can do. Again, because of our volunteer lawyer program, sometimes when we cannot take it because of our grant funding, sometimes they can place it with someone. So feel free to reach out if something like that comes up.
Okay, so I have a quick follow-up question then, and I don't know who would be the right person to answer. It might be a CASA person, but in order to, like, if I had that situation where there's an extended family member that wants to take custody, do we have to have a termination of parental rights first in order for that to happen? Does anyone know?
I believe the answer is, well, from my knowledge, that parent, that extended family member could get temporary custody. Obviously without that, but if they want to get, I think usually, yes, you have to have a termination of parental rights before they can like fully adopt that child.
Okay, temporary custody though. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Thank you.
but a lot of grandparents that I have worked with have gotten temporary custody of their grandchildren or whatever their family relationship is.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
In my understanding, and I could be wrong, but a grandparent can also file a termination of parental rights. It's just that Legal Aid Society can't assist them with that part of the process. They would have to retain an attorney or go another route.
And there are some, so yep, they have to retain an attorney, or there are some pro se forms available on the juvenile court website that, I don't want to make it easy, but they do have some petitions that are kind of like fill in the blank to get a process started. And I see a lot of people use them. So there is that to check out. Now I get it. Some people are not very tech savvy to even get on the website to get those things. But if they were interested, they could also go talk to the juvenile court clerk who might be able to give them. I mean, we could print them for them, obviously, if they're talking to us, but they do have a lot of pro se petitions that, and I think the one they have literally has grandparent or it has different boxes you can check and different fill in the blank to get that petition started in juvenile court. That's what I find it.
And it looks like Lexi has put her email in the chat if folks want to check that out. If anyone has questions, she works for Immigration and Family Law.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, Lexi's obviously a perfect point of contact because she can direct it to immigration or to family law if either of those are what you know potentially you can help with.
Well, I really appreciate your time. I guess last call for any other information that you guys are wanting to request. Otherwise, I don't want to just take any more of Rebecca's time.
Oh no, thank you guys so much. It's lovely to meet all of you. I'm so grateful for all the work that you do. I will also drop my email in chat. If you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, Lexi. Happy to help you guys if you have a civil legal issue that we can try to get you guys help.
Well, we appreciate your time as well. And Lexi is one of my advocates. So if anybody loses her email, just shoot me one and I will connect you guys. And I guess if Rebecca, feel free to stay on or jump off, but just a few announcements. And then if you guys have any like non-legal aid related questions, we can do that as well. And I'll see if any of the other supervisors have any announcements to drop in here. I want to mention the CASA Summit coming up on November the 4th, just because it will be here. It feels like a long way off, but I know November will be here before we know it. And we'll have more details on that soon, like exact dates and times. And I guess my plea would just be also just to continue to add those visits in Optima. For me, it's super helpful. I know for all of us to be able to track your cases that way. But Sarah, Kelsey, Alexa, anybody want to have anything else? Yeah, it's November the 4th. Sorry, November the 4th. Go ahead.
Yeah, just I ask my folks if they can enter their own hours for these sessions. So just remember that it's September and there's 12 hours required. So make sure you're entering those hours. And you get 6 of them at the summit and 1 for today.
For those on my team, I did go ahead and enter your hour for today. So
Sherry's nicer than I am.
Yes. I think I don't have too many to enter, so I think I can cover it for you guys on my team. But anybody else have anything to add, questions, comments, etc.? All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's time, giving up your lunch hour, and hopefully that was helpful information. It sounds like a case-by-case basis. So, I mean, when in doubt, we could always ask, because, and I like what Sarah was saying about the funding. Like, that's just something good to keep top of mind, because if there's any way we can get them something extra when they age out, like, I'm all for it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it wouldn't hurt to call,
Yeah.
if you have kids that are aging out. Just to see if there's any way they can get access to more funding. I think kids are just so focused on the day by day. This might not take priority, but it's something that you could definitely advocate for.
For sure. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a good Thursday, and we will be in touch soon.
Thanks for setting this up, Sarah.
yeah, thanks.
All right. See y'all soon. Bye.
Thanks, Sarah.
You're welcome.